Hey guys, and welcome back to the Integrated Self Podcast. I'm so excited you're here. I am Arianna. If you've never met me before, I'm a holistic health practitioner and a spiritual mentor. Thank you guys for tuning into this week's episode. And this week's episode is actually going to be more of a fun topic. It's going to be more on the positive side of healing. And I want to share with you guys some signs of healing, signs that you're healing. And these are really fun to talk about. And I can't wait to sprinkle in some of my stories and start sharing some points to, because I feel like healing is a subtle thing, right? Like healing, especially when we're working on emotional, mental, spiritual healing, growth, challenging ourselves to be the best versions of ourselves, right? It's kind of a subtle thing that I feel like when you start working on yourself in certain ways, you're kind of like so in it, you're so focused on what you're healing or holding the self-awareness or kind of just pinpointing moments in your life to practice what you're learning or implement the new way of being, or you're catching yourself thinking a certain thought and then you replace it with a new thought, or maybe you're working on your spiritual practice and implementing actual things that you're doing to help you connect to the universe, help you connect to your divinity, whatever it may be. I feel like it's such a subtle thing that it's almost like, how do I know that I'm doing it? How do I know that I'm doing well? What are certain things that I can look for gradually as they happen in my life that are signs that I'm healing and I'm doing better, or I'm raising my vibration, or whatever it may be? So I think I wrote out or prepared about four to 6 points, and we'll just go point by point today. So before we even get into that, I want to share with you a couple of updates that are going on, with my business, with my services, but also like just how I've been doing this past week energetically. And that's kind of where I want to start today, because I don't know about you guys, but I know we had daylight savings. At least I live in New York. I live in the United States, so we have daylight savings. And so we lost an hour of sleep and the clocks turned forward. I had to think about that for a second. And so we lost an hour of sleep, and I know a lot of people are like struggling right now with their sleep, and that's normally how daylight savings would affect me in the spring. But I don't know if I think it's a combination of things. And I posted this on my TikTok, and a lot of people were in the comments like agreeing with me. And then some people were like, what is going on? And I thought I would just talk about it here. So for me personally, like I'm not super into astrology. That's not something that I study super well. I know the basics of astrology, but I'm not an astrologist. That's not something that I use in my business. Obviously, like I talk about meditation and mindset work and visualization and a bunch of other things that I use, but astrology wasn't something that, like, I value it. I believe that it definitely has an impact on our planet and therefore us as energetic beings, or electromagnetic beings is really what we are. Not like super up to date and super knowledgeable on the astrology side of things, but I felt like this past weekend when daylight savings hit, like a Monday, Tuesday, throughout this week, I've been feeling so differently. Like I felt like there was a shift that happened like this past weekend or Monday. I really started feeling it Monday. And at first I'm like, okay, is it my female cycle, right? Because as females, we know that our mood and our energy levels shift based on where we are in our cycle. It could have been daylight savings. It could have been just my energy and like personally what I've been healing and what I've been working on within myself. But yeah, I just felt like there was this huge shift that occurred within me. And, I just posted a quick video asking if anyone felt it. And a lot of people were saying yes, yes, yes. So a lot of times that can be described as like a quantum jump or a timeline jump, which I can make a whole other podcast episode about, because I know these terms are kind of, they're a little misunderstood, or people don't really know exactly what that is. But basically what I'm trying to share with you is that I've felt this shift over this past weekend where I have all this energy. I feel different. I feel like the world is different. I've been following my intuition a lot more, which has been leading me to new experiences, new routines. I'm being a little bit more social as well. And I just feel differently, you guys. I feel like something shifted within me. I don't know how you guys have been feeling, but I just felt this positive shift. It's almost like I can describe it as like a weight lifted from my shoulders. And it wasn't like I was dealing with anything super like something that I could pinpoint and tell you, because I obviously, once I felt differently, I started kind of going within and reflecting and doing some introspection to kind of figure out, okay, I feel different. Like, what is it? What, like, cause I just feel like I don't have as much fear. I have so much more optimism and like expectation, positive expectation and excitement for the future. I don't know if it's just my soul path where I have a lot of great, amazing things that are going to be happening this year. And I don't know if it's myself feeling that energy kind of ramping up in my reality. But yeah, I obviously I feel like, and I believe that there are certain groups of people in the world that are on the same frequency, that are going through the same things. And that's why when you see a reading or you watch a video and everyone in the comments is like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been experiencing, or oh my gosh, you literally just explained my life, it's because a lot of us are on similar paths. And so yeah, a lot of people seem to resonate with it. And yeah, someone asked me, like, can you explain why this is? And I'm like, well, I don't know, because it could be a combination of things. It also could just be due to like, since daylight savings did come and we changed the clocks back, that it's actually lighter out in the evening time, so a lot of people's like feel like their seasonal depression is lifting as well. So it could just be a lot of energetic things kind of in combination. Could be personally related, could be related to like the energy of the earth or the energy of the whole collective. But yeah, if you guys have been feeling differently this week, it could just be a bunch of different things. Like I wanted to say what it was, but I can't honestly tell you. Sometimes when we heal, this happens where you really identify a fear, or you sit with that fear, you work through it, and you start to have an epiphany or an aha moment of like, wow, I can't believe has been the thing on my mind, this has been the thing kind of disrupting where I want to go. And you kind of come into acceptance or surrender to it, and you then find that when you're about to go do that thing that usually brings you fear, you have less fear. And it's because you've really identified and sat with that, and now you don't give it so much power, right? So I feel like the energy that I'm feeling is like an extreme, like taking my power back. I've been pouring a lot more into myself. I've been like setting higher standards with myself and actually following through with that, because that's the thing, is self-sabotage can really get you where you have the mindset, you can do it, but when it comes to following through with action to align to that intention, sometimes you don't follow it up with action because you have a subconscious fear of it actually working out, right? Like, this is serious. And it's kind of like when you say it out loud, it can kind of be like, haha, like, wow, you actually fear success. Like, you actually fear what you actually want to happen. And it's so true. Like, because your whole life you probably thought that that's something that you couldn't do or that wasn't going to happen. And so now you're actually taking the action, starting to believe that it could actually happen for you. Of course you're going to start to fear it. Like, there's a quote out there, I forget what exactly who said it and what the quote says per like word for word, but it's kind of a quote of like, most people are afraid of their own power, and that's why they self-sabotage, because it's almost like, think about someone really famous or a celebrity or whoever. And it's like, now obviously we see how successful they are, but they didn't know that before they got the success. So it's almost like you're taking a chance on yourself, you're taking a risk. And obviously our human brain can go towards, oh, this is going to go wrong. But in reality, it's learning to shift that attention to, this can go actually right. This can actually be better than anything I ever imagined. What if this actually is going to blow up, or this is going to be so successful, right? I feel like we mostly entertain the worst case scenario. When you start to shift that mindset into constantly expecting the best case scenario, you start to like realize that you're not self-sabotaging anymore, because now you're excited. Now the fear of your own power, the fear of success is turning into excitement, right? You start to alchemize all these emotions and things within you that used to kind of push away your own dreams because you were terrified of them actually coming true. And then you start to actually work towards them with excitement and optimism, because now you have the confidence, now you have the belief in yourself that you can actually do it. So yeah, I don't know, you guys. I've just been feeling so good this week. I've been exploring outside. Just been like connecting with nature, and I feel like I can tap into a frequency within myself. Like there are layers to us that if you spend time with them, you can tap into parts of yourself that you've never known before. And there's a certain feeling I feel when I kind of like I don't want to say like I was going to say walk away from life, but it's more so this energy of like releasing any worries, releasing any frustrations of day to day life or little stressors, and just connecting with nature or just working out or listening to a hype playlist or, whatever it may be. And I connect back to my power. I connect back to who I really am and what I'm really here to do. And it's so motivating. And so, anytime that I am around a group of people that I tend to lower my vibration around because I know they'll judge me or whatever it may be, I always like tell myself like, okay, this isn't who you really are, right? Like the reason why you feel icky right now is because you're lowering your vibration to match everyone else, and these are certain things that I know I can turn to connect back to my authentic frequency, to who I truly am, and learn to live in that energy majority of the time if I can, right? So it's really about learning be to influence the energy of the room instead of kind of conform to the energy of the room, right? And it doesn't mean that you're trying to like be the shiniest, brightest object or you're trying to be the loudest person. It's more so like if you walk into a situation or a room or some kind of event, it's learning to kind of before you walk in be like, I know who I am. I'm secure in who I am, and I'm not going to allow anyone here to make me feel less than my own worth and who I know myself to be, right? Because that's what I used to do in the past before I felt connected to my self-worth and my divinity. Was I would constantly be confident in behind closed doors, and I'd be like, I felt safe with myself, but then when I went out into the world, that's when I was judging myself and comparing myself and being like, oh, I'm not pretty. Like I thought I was pretty at home when I was just by myself, but now I'm with a bunch of other people. Now I'm judging myself and feeling like I'm not pretty, right? So it's really learning that as well, is to constantly carry your authentic frequency wherever you go, because that's the gift that God gave you, is uniquely being your own individual and lighting up rooms that you go in instead of having a bright light and walking into a room of darkness or judgmental people and allowing them to dim your light, right? Because you can feel that. It kind of feels like you're shrinking and your posture starts to go down and you start to like quiet yourself and just kind of like nod and sit in the corner. So yeah, that's just how I've been feeling lately. But I want to get into the signs of healing, the signs that you're healing. And then at the end of the episode, I'm going to tell you guys what's going on with my business, with my social medias, and what to kind of look forward to. So, the first sign that you're healing is that you are able to control your reactions and you aren't as triggered, right? So, this is a fun one to talk about because I used to be constantly I used to constantly get triggered and then lash out, right? It's kind of like, if you snap a rubber band on your wrist, you're going to flinch. And it was like a cause and effect. It was an immediate triggered and then an immediate reaction, right? So if my girlfriend was like triggering me, I would immediately like lash out with a hurtful comment. I'm not kidding you guys. Like, and the reason why I feel so comfortable to talk about myself in this way is because I truly have gotten to the place where I'm not that version of me anymore, and this is my purpose. I want people to feel free in their minds and their emotions and their body, in their spirit, so that they can enjoy life, because I didn't like having to be around my best friends and them trigger me. Like, that didn't feel good. It felt like there was something wrong with me. I knew there was something off in that, because I'm like, there's nothing wrong with this girl. I love her. I genuinely do. How come I'm triggered in her presence, right? And I also believe that vulnerability heals, like sharing my personal stories, talking about my traumas. Writing my book where I was talking about my traumas was so healing for me to write, because it was like this therapeutic process of sharing my life and talking about things from a place of like, I've healed from these things, and I still have them as memories, but it's almost like they shaped me into who I am today. And I'm just grateful for my past at this point, because I've learned so much from it that now I can sit here confidently and open up and share these sensitive or vulnerable situations that I feel like a lot of people wouldn't want to admit. Like as a girl, you don't want to, or a woman, you don't want to admit that you're jealous around other girls, right? Like we all know that's, you're supposed to be a girl's girl, right? And I am now, and I always knew that I was, but I had all these wounds from my childhood that made me feel triggered around other people. So you know that you're healing when you're in a situation that normally would trigger you and would immediately, like, you can feel yourself being triggered. You can feel that energy moving through your body, right? Like when someone says something that's offensive and it triggers you, you can feel like maybe your hands start to get hot, or you start to tingle, or you just feel this rush of energy through you and you don't know what to do. You just want to like scream, right? Like being triggered is a noticeable state of the body as well. And so when you start to heal and you start to work on these things and you start to change from having a reaction, which is something that you're not consciously doing, to having a response, right? So this is what I do when I'm triggered. Is the first one is to pause, right? So when you feel triggered in a situation, if you're not holding the self-awareness and you're not attuned to the fact that you're triggered, what's going to happen is you're just going to have an automatic, like subconscious reaction to that trigger. So it might be to fight. It might be to say something, lash out, right? It might be to fawn, which is another part of the survival mode where you're triggered and then you're just like, yeah, you're right, yeah, that's fawning. Fawning is more so like people pleasing, agreeing, shoving things under the rug because you don't want to deal with negative emotions or conflict. Or you might be someone who wants to flee or to flight, right? Fight, flight, and fawn. Okay, so maybe you flee, maybe you're like, I'm out of here, I'm leaving, let's go, when you're triggered, right? So these are normally, there's three, some people would argue there's more, reactions but they're subconscious, right? So you can notice that when you're triggered, you immediately want to like have this reaction. Your body immediately wants to help you get out of that situation. And this is a normal thing that your body is built in to do. Like this mechanism, survival mode, is important for us as human beings, as a biological organism on this planet. We need to have this survival mode, this fight, flight, or fawn mechanism to protect us from dangerous situations, right? Like it's helpful when someone's attacking you to fight back. And you're not sitting there in the situation thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, let's fight. Like it's just something you do automatically because your body knows how to protect you like that. But what happens when it comes to these quote unquote dangerous situations, when it's an emotional thing, like when you're emotionally unsafe or you're mentally unsafe, right? When it's more of those subtle feelings and thoughts, like when you're not physically in danger, but you're emotionally feeling unsafe or targeted or, whatever it may be, a lot of us have we get triggered and we have a reaction. It's subconscious. It happens immediately. So when we heal, we work on this. We work on what to do when we're triggered. So the first thing that I tell my clients to do is pause and breathe. So P and B, pause, breathe. Okay. And this allows that energy to move through you, because basically that's what your body is doing when you're not holding this self-awareness and you're triggered. Is your body is triggered and that energy moves through you and your body immediately starts to prepare you to deal with this conflict. But when you can learn to heal and you can learn to hold space for yourself in these moments, we can create space between the trigger and the response. So now it's not that you're getting triggered and you immediately react. It's not a reaction. It's a conscious response. So now you get triggered, you pause, you breathe, and then you ask yourself, how can I respond to this? Right? What is going to be best for me? And a lot of times your response is going to be so different than your reaction, right? So this is kind of cultivating new ways that by doing this, you are forming a new way to teach your body how to respond. That's actually going to be more peaceful for you. That's actually going to create less relationship conflict, right? Because I've been in a relationship before where my boyfriend said something and I got triggered and I just lashed out and I just said something because I wanted to hurt him because he hurt me. But that's not healthy. That's toxic, right? So when I started working on being triggered, right, the first thing is to really identify why you're triggered. What are you triggered about? Right? So maybe I'm jealous. My ex-boyfriend said something about another girl and now I'm jealous. I'm triggered because I'm not secure in myself and now he's talking about another girl. And maybe the comment is super normal. It's just like, "Oh yeah, did you see the women's basketball team won?" But that triggered me. It made me feel insecure because at the time I was just insecure about any girl, right? So I would be triggered. And so instead of lashing out and saying something rude and bitchy, like, yeah, well, why don't you just go hang out with the women's basketball team then? Like, that's how toxic I used to be. And that was my reaction. And so now I'm not in that relationship anymore. And it's been many years of healing. But now, when I've worked on this so many times that when I'm triggered, pause, I take a deep breath, and then I think to myself, what's a healthy way of responding to this? Pause when you're triggered, breathe, and then ask yourself what a healthy response would be. So maybe a healthy response to what the example I just gave would be just saying, no, I didn't know that. Good for them, right? Like, I didn't know the women's basketball team won today. Good for them, right? Like, that's healthy. That's me happy for them. So it's really working on the time when you're triggered and creating space between you being triggered and you responding or reacting from that triggered state. Because when you respond, you're now responding from a place of self-awareness, of using your consciousness to create your response, whereas a reaction is a programmed, automatic, subconscious reaction that you don't really have control over. And so the more and more that you do this, the more and more you realize that you're less triggered because you're allowing yourself to have more space in between to regulate your nervous system and then create a response that's healthier for you. So every time you practice this in real life, you start to think about it like, every time you practice this in real life, think about you building and strengthening this skill. You're learning how to regulate yourself. You're learning emotional intelligence. You're learning how to communicate yourself. You're learning how to respect others, right? But also stand up for yourself as well. It's really important to practice this in real life. It's almost like being grateful for being triggered because it's providing you an opportunity to practice this and strengthen a new way of being, to strengthen a new response that's going to replace the old reaction. And so what happens is, as you work on yourself and you work on these triggers and you work on getting comfortable in a triggered state and just realizing, hey, I'm going to give myself some space, give my body some space by pausing and breathing right now so that I can regulate myself and I don't allow this energy to come through me and basically be uncontrolled, like be out of control in my reaction and what I say. Because I think we've all been there where we're so emotional, we're in such an emotional state that we end up projecting, we end up lashing out or reacting or saying stuff that we don't mean or doing something, right? Like even doing something that you don't want to do to get back at somebody or to show someone whatever. And that's not helping yourself. That's not self-love, right? Because self-love would look like, hey, I deserve to not be so triggered all the time. Let me work on this. Let me give myself some space so I can learn how to regulate. Okay. So one of the signs that you're healing is that you're less triggered in situations that used to trigger you, and you're actually forming conscious responses to these situations that are different than your normal reactions that have been so programmed, right? Like it's like you overriding the program that's been in play this whole time with something healthier, with something more peaceful, with something that's going to regulate you and your emotions. And so that's a huge, huge thing that I'm sure everyone says when they're on their healing journey, that, oh, I'm less triggered. And you start to just feel more comfortable in yourself and you have conscious control over yourself. And especially the way that I grew up, which I which I wrote in the book that's coming out this year, I grew up in an environment that taught my nervous system to be so overstimulated. And I now have so much patience because of years of regulation that I've taught myself. I've literally trained my nervous system to be calm in these situations that it's used to being like in bing, 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 you're like ding, 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 you're in danger, you're in danger. Like there's loud noises, like blah, 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 like stimulation, and I'm now like cool as a cucumber, and it's genuine. It's not me saying that. It's not me sitting there and it looks like I'm calm, but underneath the surface, I'm not. No, it's genuine. Like I don't feel my nervous system shift into that triggered state anymore because I've practiced it so many times. And I've done that through welcoming situations in my life that provided me an opportunity to practice it, right? So a lot of people on their healing journey think like, oh, like I'm going to avoid all these situations that trigger me so I can heal. But my thing is like, yes, of course, there's times where you go in kind of like a hermit mode situation, or you kind of go within and you're not super social and you're meditating, or you're just like redefining your life and you're not out in the world doing all these things. But avoiding your triggers isn't healing. So I believe the reason why I've done so much regulation and I've been able to make these internal shifts that have created external shifts in my actual physical reality over time. And the reason why I'm so regulated now is because I've practiced it, and because I allowed myself to be triggered. I was honest with myself, and I welcomed the situations in my life that would trigger me because I knew that I could heal in those situations, that I had to be triggered in order to practice regulating myself. So a lot of people think like, oh yeah, I just avoid that situation, or I avoid that because I know it triggers me and now I'm more peaceful. And it's like, well, of course you're more peaceful because you're purposely avoiding the situations that trigger you, but that's not healing. Healing is when you put yourself into that triggered state, or maybe you don't do it consciously and on purpose, but you're out at dinner, right, with your family or your in-laws or whoever, and someone's like talking about something and it's triggering you, right? Like these are the situations that you do the healing in real time, in real life. We need real life experience in situations to practice and integrate these new ways of being, to show our mind and body, hey, this is what we're doing now. We're not doing what we're used to doing, which is why it's pretty uncomfortable at first. But the more you integrate it in, integration means it's solid. It's in your subconscious. It's part of you now. You don't have to consciously think about it, right? So I know that was a long-winded answer, but that was the first one. The second one is that you're using your voice more, right? So you kind of go from this feeling of, I can't say that, or people are going to judge me, or you know what, I'm just going to keep my opinion to myself, to saying what you want to freaking say and speaking up when you normally wouldn't even say anything, right? Or even just your communication starts to be more from a place of power. And when I say power, I don't mean power as in I have so much power, I'm more powerful than you, like power when it comes to the ego. I'm talking about power when it comes from like your divinity, from your self-worth, right? From your own confidence in who you are and what you bring to the table, right? Or even just what you know you deserve and what you know you should be treated like and you shouldn't be treated like. So power really comes from this innate inner knowing of value, of worth, of self-trust, of confidence in who you are and security in who you are. So what happens is a lot of people that are healing, they start to stand up for themselves more. They start to, if they're in a relationship, they start to go to that person and start, saying things that they normally kept quiet and complained about to their friends, right? Like a lot of times I have so many people in my life that come to me for advice, and it's hard for me because I'm like, I don't want to carry you through this situation. I want to give you the empowerment and the confidence that you can deal with this situation. So a lot of times what I find when it comes to romantic partnerships and like romantic relationships is that everything you're complaining to your best friend about or your parents about your partner, you should be saying to your partner. Like I've had girlfriends in college and still have friends, obviously, that will come to me and complain about their boyfriend. And I'm like, take it up with him. Take it up with him. Why are you speaking to me? Take it up with him. Right? Like now I've gotten to this place where I personally don't think that you should be talking any kind of shit about the person you're with to anybody. You should be talking about your problems with that person, right? It's kind of like you having a problem and then choosing to complain about the problem instead of solving it. And the way you solve it is by communicating with your partner. But a lot of the reason why this happens is because I have compassion for these people, because I understand that they don't feel secure and confident in themselves to be able to go to that person and communicate what they really want to say. Like they have no problem venting to me and being like, I can't believe this and I'm not taking this shit anymore. And I'm like, say that to them. Say that to him, say that to her, you know? So when you heal, you have more love for yourself, where it's almost like you have this power, you have this fire within you. And it's like, I have been sleeping on myself for way too long. And it's about dang time that I start saying the truth. I start speaking up for myself, right? Like, even people might in this way go to their boss and demand a raise or demand different working conditions because they've just been like tolerating mistreatment for so long, and then they finally get the courage to go out and say to their boss with confidence, like, I deserve a raise, here's why, and it's from a place of power, and it's from a place of self-love and self-worth. And so when you start to heal, you start to feel more confident in the way you communicate yourself. You start to tolerate less shit from people, and you start to feel more comfortable in speaking up. And I think that that's one of the most beautiful things ever, is self-expression and saying what you really want to say, because that is authenticity as well. And that's showing the universe that you honor what you believe and what you want, and that you're willing to stand in that, right? Even if a lot of people might disagree with you. And it's because when you heal, you start to develop a different relationship with fear, where I look at fear now as fear can be really healthy. Fear can really push you outside your comfort zone to do things that are for your highest good. But when you start to intellectualize fear and you start to be like, oh, and then you listen to it, right? A lot of times people feel fear and they listen to it, and that's why they don't end up having the experiences they want, because they're caving to the fear. They're allowing the fear to stop them instead of realizing that the fear is coming up to show you, and it's like a warning sign. It's your body saying, hey, we haven't been in this situation before. We don't really know what's on the other side of this. We don't really know how we're going to do in this situation. Just letting you know that's where we're at. And so we're feeling a little anxious. We're feeling a little fearful over what's going to come from this, because you've never been in this situation before. You've never been here before. But you don't have to listen to that and take it as, oh, that means I shouldn't do this. Fear means I'm doing something wrong. And it's like, no, fear means that you are doing something you've never done before and you don't really know what's going to come of it. But that's okay. And that's how everyone grows, right? Like, imagine if freaking Brad Pitt had fear in his first audition ever, and he listened to that fear, he wouldn't be where he is today, because he wouldn't have allowed himself to audition. So that's a second thing that happens, is when you start to heal, you start to use your voice more. You start to feel more powerful. You start to awaken and activate that throat chakra. And it kind of feels like, it's like, wow, I was sleeping on myself this whole time, and now I have so much I want to say. And maybe in certain groups or situations, you feel like, oh, well, I don't have the same opinion as them, so I'm just going to like shut my mouth. And in certain situations, like if you read the room, that might be the case, right? But now it's almost like you realize that you also deserve your voice to be heard. And just because you have a different opinion than someone else, it doesn't mean that you're wrong and you don't deserve to express yourself either. The third thing that happens when you're healing, and I've just noticed this within myself, and I've also noticed this, these are like common themes, right? So it's almost like no matter what you're healing, a lot of times these things can kind of come as a byproduct or result in your life. And so the third thing that I want to talk about is your ability starts to increase when it comes to allowing people to just be and say and do whatever they want, right? I used to be the person where Like, if I had a best friend and she was dating someone I didn't like, and I could clearly see that they were treating her wrongly and not the best, and it wasn't good for her, I almost felt like I needed to rescue her. I couldn't sleep knowing that she was, making bad decisions, or she wasn't being treated well, or, like she could be happier, all these things. And it's like you have this urge to want to rescue people, to change them, to speak out against what they do, and to show them like, hey, you're doing it wrong, or that you don't deserve that, and only if you should do this, right? Like, you have this urge to want to like rescue people and solve their problems for them, and know everything about what's going on with their life. And when you start to heal, it's kind of like all that kind of dissolves, because you're so self-focused on who you are and what you want and what you're working on, that you don't have time to keep up tabs on everybody and to rescue them, and all these things. Like, you have less desire to change others. And obviously we know we can't change anybody, but when you love someone, it's like you want them to see it, you want them to understand where you're coming from. But when you start to heal within, and you start to have this power within yourself and this self-love for you, you start to realize that like you can't force people to learn their own lessons, and that everyone else is on their own journey of learning their own lessons and making their own mistakes and choices, just like we are. And so it's almost like you have this it's almost like that people in your life might not be the happiest, might be in unfulfilled relationships, jobs, could maybe you have even a solution of someone else's problem, but it's like it's not your business to fix everyone else's lives. And once you start pouring all of that people pleasing energy back into you, you kind of look, and of course you still have empathy and compassion for these people, and like you love them and you wish that they could see it or whatever. But it's almost like we're all adults. If they don't want to see it, if they don't want to change or heal or solve their own problems, why is it any of my business? I've got my own shit to deal with. And it's almost like you start to kind of stay in your own lane and sympathize, of course, or empathize with people around you that you love that are going through things. But at the same time, it's almost like that part of you that wants to like sacrifice your own needs or your own time or your own energy for them. It's almost like you realize that it's actually for their highest good to go through that in order to learn the lesson, whenever that may be. I'll just say I had a friend at some point in my life. I won't say when it was, because I don't know who watches this. I have a feeling a lot of my family and friends watch my podcast, but I had a friend and she was with some guy that I didn't really like at all. And I was very cordial and civil and nice to this person, but I wasn't super thrilled about their relationship, because I just saw how much she was like sacrificing of her own life and energy and time for this man. Like, she was like mothering him, and it was just not a good situation. And he didn't really reciprocate that energy back to her except buy her stuff. So it very much became like a super awkward and weird dynamic between them that everyone was like, what's this about? But anyway, I had this urge to want to tell her and be like, what are you doing? Can't you see that this is weird? You're spending all of your time mothering this man when he doesn't care about that, and he doesn't like thank you or anything. And, I wanted her to see it so badly. And I almost like realized that she needed to go through that herself. I want to be here to help people that want to change and want to grow and come to me and they're excited to change and experience new things and feel better. But when it comes to people that are just going through the motions and making their own decisions, like, that's their life, that's their choice, like, that's their relationship. So it's none of my business. And when you shift in this way, when you're healing, you have so much more peace, because you're not up at night thinking about other people and coming up with solutions, or being on the phone for hours, like venting about everyone's problems, and you know maybe canceling your plans or what you need to do, or shuffling around your life to be able to tend to other people and their problems. And it doesn't mean that, of course, if my family or friends call me and they need me, of course I'll be there for them. But it's almost like this people pleasing used to take me over to the point where my own life would suffer, my own emotions, my schoolwork, whatever it was, my money would suffer because I was the first to like hand it out, or the first to be like, you know what, fuck that biochem test that I have tomorrow. My friend just got broken up with. But in reality, there's a balance we can come to where we love you, we are here for you anytime you need me, but I'm not going to carry you through problems and give you the solution and tell you how to live your life, right? Or stay awake at night and be anxious over a life that isn't mine to live. So that's another thing that happens when you heal, which is super liberating. 1, 2, 3. The fourth one is that you find that you're less judgmental of people in general. When you're healing, you find that you're less judgmental of people. So like I remember when I was in that toxic state of mind because I was so insecure and I was living in survival mode. My hormones were all out of whack. I didn't really have any confidence or value in myself or any self-love at all. And so I was very judgmental. I also at this time didn't have a relationship with my spirituality at all. So I was living in this mindset of like, there's no purpose to anything and there's no meaning to life and like, fuck everything. Like I was very much in that mindset. And so I was very judgmental. Like, I was living in negativity so much that I was projecting that negativity onto people around me. And I never was the type to like express my judgment, but I thought it. And I'm going to be honest with you, I've thought it before. Like I've casted judgment on people before in my own head. And we all have, right? I don't think that's something that's crazy to admit. But it's almost like when you start to heal, you start to open up that heart chakra, you start to allow yourself to feel more of those higher vibrational emotions that maybe you were scared to feel before, or maybe you didn't really feel that much. Like majority of your emotions were negative or neutral and or contentment. You never really felt like extreme joy, happiness, satisfaction, excitement. And so when you start to feel more of those emotions, you start to allow yourself to feel more peaceful, more joyful, more happy, more abundant, more beautiful, right? Like whatever it may be. So when you spend time in those high vibrational emotions, it's almost like now you're balancing out within yourself and you're kind of looking at everything with a clear perspective. You're starting to see now that you're being more self-aware about yourself and you're understanding and having more self-love and compassion for you, that starts to translate in the way that you see people and perceive people. So in the past, I thought so negatively and I was judging myself all the time that that's naturally what I would do when I saw anybody else. You stop judging people. You start to see people as you. You start to see people as reflections of you. You start to say to yourself, hey, I don't know where this person's been. I don't know their life story. I don't know anything, right? Like, who am I to judge them? And also from a spiritual perspective, I've really gotten to the place where it's like, that's a creation of God. Like that person is a creation of God. So who am I to judge them? Right. And I've been my fair share of insecure. I've been my fair share of rude and lashing out and played the victim mode. And, I've been in my fair share of low moments and moments that I was not acting in self-love or, love for someone else. And now it's like I see people with optimism, with love, with, hey, we're all one. And, I don't judge people anymore based on their appearance or where they come from or what they say. I just look at people as, hey, we're all here figuring life out together. And we all have different life experience and we all have different backgrounds and all the things, but we're also the same. And so I always have come back to that perspective and it's been so freeing for me. And now I actually am open to having connections with people that I think my past self would have avoided because in my head, I would have judged them. And now I'm like, hey, I want to learn more about you. I want to hear your story. I love meeting people that, seem like it's almost like, hey, how would them two get along? How would I get along with this person? But you'd be surprised if you allow yourself to actually connect on a level that's not superficial. And you just start to see that people as other human beings, other spiritual beings, other creations of God that are walking this earth. And it's like, I've just had so much compassion for everybody. That person woke up today, that person went to bed last night, and we're all one. It's very freeing to not judge people all the time and not be so negative and critical of people. And that happens because you stop being so negative and critical of yourself as well, right? Because we see people as reflections of us. So if you don't want to judge others so much, it starts with you not judging yourself as much. The last thing that I want to touch on is that when you start to heal, you start to notice that you're pouring into yourself more. And this might be something that happens gradually where you don't even really notice it at first. But then like maybe a month goes by or a couple weeks or 2 months or 4 months, and you realize that you are naturally pouring so much more energy back into yourself than you were putting out to a bunch of other things, right? So this could look like you having clear and stronger boundaries within yourself when it comes to scrolling, right? I know, like, being a business owner and a student at the same time, I only have so much time in the day to build my business, to be on this podcast, to, whatever it may be, and get my classwork done and write a book and publish a book. Like, all these things are on my plate. And so I recognize that even just scrolling for 10 minutes a couple times a day takes a substantial amount of time away from me. And that doesn't mean that every minute of my day is filled with something productive and good for me, but sometimes it's refreshing to not scroll while I'm cooking dinner, right? Like, I had this moment with myself where I realized that, like, anytime I did anything, I was constantly like having TV in the background or having like scrolling while I'm doing something. And it's like, that's just so much energy that I'm focusing on and trying to multitask. And you start to realize in the small ways that you give your energy to certain things, or like the small things that your old self would say yes to just to help people out, but now your new self is like, I just don't want to commit to that because that's going to take this time or this energy away from me. You know what I'm saying? So when you start to heal, you start to realize that it becomes natural for you to pour into yourself more, whether that's allowing yourself to wake up earlier to get your workout in, or having tea before bed because it's relaxing and your body is actually using that, right? Maybe it's making sure that you're getting 30 minutes of daylight or sunlight every single day because that lifts you up and that you need that vitamin D, right? Like, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. It could be on the smallest levels, or it can be all the way to the biggest levels where you quit your job eventually. And I'm not telling you to quit your job, but I'm saying a larger example of this would be you pouring into yourself by allowing yourself to achieve the dreams that you've always had and leave the soul-sucking job behind. Like, that's an example of pouring into yourself and allowing yourself to do what you genuinely want to spend your time doing on this planet, right? Because, like, I feel like we can all get so used to the fact that, like, oh yeah, life's so short, but it is. So why are we spending our time doing things we don't want to do, right? Like, that's kind of like what I want to teach my kids, because that's kind of the opposite of what I was taught. Like, I was taught to, you know, it matters to so and so, so you have to be there. And it's like, of course, like, I'm not going to be a rude or bitchy when it comes to important events or things, but it's like, if I don't want to do something, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm no longer going to force myself and waste my time and energy to participate or to do something that I genuinely don't want to do. But, it's just learning to look at every choice we have and ask, okay, is this going to benefit me, or is this going to drain me, or is this going to set me back, or is this going to put me in a place tomorrow that I'm going to regret, whatever it may be. So that's the fifth note that I wanted to point on today, is you pour into yourself more, and it's natural for you to love yourself. It's natural for you to want to enjoy life and to have fun and take care of yourself and, honor yourself. So those are the 5 signs that you're healing. Those aren't the only 5 signs, by the way. Okay. So don't take it away like, okay, well, I only have 3 of those. And you know what I mean? Don't take this verbatim, because there's so many signs. There are so many signs that you're healing, but these are the big ones that you notice over time. And I'm sure I could make another video with another 5 signs, but yeah, so that pretty much concludes this week's episode. I really just wanted to end today real quick by chatting about what's going on. So I kind of closed my services for the time being because I'm actually going to be switching to a different platform. I was using a certain platform for a while for my services, and I'm really interested. And I actually, on my Instagram, I did a poll where I asked you guys like asking you guys if you feel lonely on your journeys of healing or spiritual growth. And a lot of you said yes, and you would love to have a community. And so I'm in the middle of outlining and creating that community for my spiritual besties that are here. So we can all have like a group, and we can all chat and support each other and make friends and be on live calls together. Like, I really believe that healing in groups is so powerful because not only do you get that, like, your questions answered and the resources and information that you need and time, like, you get access to me, but you also like get to be and see like other people's wins and see other people ask their questions. So it's like you're getting so much value by being in a group. And you also get to meet and be motivated by people that are doing the same thing as you or on the same journey as you. And it's really, really cool to kind of see how everyone's so the same, but everyone's also so unique at the same time. So that is something that I'm working on right now. I think it's actually, I'm not going to tell you what the name of the membership is going to be called, but yeah, so that's what I'm working on now. And I'm working on creating some sessions where like you could meet with me for 30 or 60 minutes and we could do like, I could guide you through a visualization or a meditation, stuff like that. And then I am also working on solidifying my dissertation topic. So right now I'm a board certified holistic health practitioner, but I'm working on getting my doctorate and PhD in natural medicine. So I have to write a dissertation for my PhD and doctorate. And I'm really interested on working with people to improve their depression naturally through certain modalities, certain things in this space. So I am in the beginning stages of working on that dissertation. I'm going to have to do a study and work with a certain number of people, but that's what I'm really passionate about is mental health from a spiritual, holistic standpoint. And so that's what I'm really excited to start working on. And so there's so many things going on right now, but I know that sometimes when you listen to my podcast or whatever the case may be, you might go to my link tree. I just wanted to put it here that I know a lot of people might be clicking on my link tree and realizing that there's no services available. But that's just because I'm in the middle of like switching everything over. So if any of these interest you, feel free to give this podcast a subscribe, a like, or just keep me in mind. Follow me on Instagram or TikTok for future information because obviously this membership will be coming out, and as well as my other services. So I'm super, super excited. For now, I'm just here to provide education and inspiration and here on the podcast and also on my social medias. So that's what I'm doing for now. And I cannot wait to have a community of my own. I already kind of do, I feel like, but to have people in one like group in one area where we can all chat and meet on monthly calls and you guys can ask your questions, and I'm going to have so many like resources in there for you. So I cannot wait. Stay tuned. Every Thursday, new podcast episodes come out. And if you guys want to kind of see what I'm up to day to day, you can follow me on Instagram and my TikTok. You can find all of that below if you're interested in checking me out. And yeah, so I hope you guys really enjoyed today's episode. Be sure to review the podcast if you're listening on Spotify. If you are watching me on YouTube, feel free to subscribe and like. And thank you very much. And I cannot wait to be back again next Thursday. So hope you guys have a great week and a weekend. Happy St. Patrick's Day, by the way, for anybody that celebrates St. Patrick's Day. I know that's this Sunday. So yeah, enjoy your weekend, everybody. And I will be back next Thursday.